We finally got the new Luquier ride line, and where most people see Pale Moon support, I, in true fashion, see Chrono Jet support! Stand up! Vanguard! Hey Cardfighters, and welcome back to another Cardfight update, and today, as said in the intro, we finally have the Luquier ride line revealed to us, and not only do we see the new ride line, we see a whole bunch of cards around it that support this new archetype, this new playstyle, which truly brings in Pale Moon into standard, and it looks pretty interesting, but more importantly, very powerful. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we also have two new promos that we need to talk about, which one of those cards being this new Grade 2 gold paneling card, Knight of Daylight Kinarius. And Kinarius has the effects: continues a Vanguard circle, Guardian circle. If you got 2 or more units this turn, this unit gets power plus 5k and shield plus 5k. So a very similar threat than we see with the Gurgit support card. So it's 14k beater or 10k shield, which honestly is pretty decent and can be very good. But it also has the effect, auto, when this unit is placed on the Vanguard circle or put on the Guardian circle, cost, discard a card from your hand, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 2 or less card from among them, call to the Vanguard circle, and put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order. If this unit was put on the Guardian circle, call this to the Guardian circle instead of the Vanguard circle. So overall, it's another way to flood the board or to get more shield on your Guardian circle, because this is yet another way to extend your defensive plays with Gurgit to potentially search or dig to your PGs if you're gonna need it. So overall, it works very well with Gurgit. Could work in other gold paladin decks, but I think this feels more in home with like a Gurgit style build, and depending on how the game plays out, this could be a very nice tech card or potential staple card for Gurgit. But gold paladin players have to figure that one out. Is this going to be the new stay for the deck or not? Now moving on to the second grade 2 promo that we have. This time we have one for Genesis, which is Mythic Snake Jormungand. And Jormungand has the effect, continues. When this card would be Soul Blast, by the ability of your Vanguard, you may Soul Blast this card as any grade from 0 to 3. So this immediately brings Astral Poet to mind, but this could also work with the extra boss unit that we had in one of the previous 10 collection that works with Soul Blasting grades. So this could be a nice addition to increase the consistency of that build. But it also has the effect, auto on Vanguard circle once a turn, when your card is put into the drop zone from your soul during your battle phase, cost counter plus 1, draw a card, and for each grade of this card put into the drop, this unit gets power plus 5k until the end of turn. So it synergizes with itself or whatever you soul blast, because this can be a counter plus 1 to draw a card and get a bunch of power. Overall, that is fine value. It's not insane, but it could be solid in certain instances. And I also just remember this could also work very nicely with Fenrir, because it allows you to tutor for any card in your deck, because this is literally any card in your deck if this is in your soul. So overall, I can definitely see this card being used as a tech choice for Fenrir, maybe the other specific restand build, or of course as an option within Astral Poet. Overall, very flexible promo card. Don't know if it's actually going to be used, but it has its usage. Now that said, let's take a look at the new Silverthorn cards, because that's the main reason why we're here. So let's take a look at this new ride line, and we start off with, of course, our basic starter, which in this case is, of course, Silverthorn Assistant Ionela. And Ionela has the effect, although when this unit is rode upon, if you went second, draw a card. The basic starter, so we can immediately move on to the grade 1, which brings us to Silverthorn Assistant Irina. And Irina has the effect, although when this unit is rode upon by a unit with only Pale Moon for its clan, so very specific use case here, so only Pale Moon encounter cards or Pale Moon in premium, look at the top 7 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 card from among them, put it into your soul, and shuffle your deck. So this is quote unquote a searcher for the archetype, which is nice because you're gonna need specific cards in your soul, because of course it's Pale Moon, and this just increases the consistency of that, which honestly is pretty good. But then it also has the effect, although when the unit is placed on the Vanguard circle, if you have a Vanguard with Luquier in its card name, you may Soul Charge 1. So essentially a Soul Charge engine, nothing any special. It can synergize once we ride to Luquier, as we're going to see in a second, but overall it's just a solid consistency engine. It doesn't really do anything instrumental for the deck. Now moving up to the grade 2, we have Silverthorn Marionette Lillian, and Lillian has the effect, although when this unit is rode upon by a unit with only Pale Moon for its clan, same condition here, Soul Charge 1, choose a card from your soul and put it into your hand. So this is interesting because this means the moment you ride to grade 3, you can either grab the grade 1 or grade 2 for the ride line, which have additional effects, as we're going to see in a second with her other skill, but in case of Irina, you can use the Unplace effect at that moment. But Also, you have the generic soul charge of this skill, but we also have the check top 7 effect. So potentially we can maybe fetch out a Persona Rite, or a specific card that has an effect that needs to be placed from hand, or maybe a PG or anything. So this effect could be very nice to set up your plays later down the line. But then Lillian also has the effect, although when it's used placed on the Vanguard circle or put on the Guardian circle, if you have a Vanguard with Luquier in its card name, this unit gets power plus 5k, shield plus 5k until the end of turn. So this is also another reason to maybe fetch this card from your hand if you want to have the additional power, if you want to have a 15k attacker slash 10k interceptor or 10k shield in hand. So overall, the grab card from your soul is relatively flexible and allows you to go for different options depending on what you just soul charged in the early game. Now, moving up to the grade 3, the boss unit, we have of course Silverthorn Dragon Tamer Luquier. And Luquier has the effect, act Vanguard Circle once a turn, cost countable as 1, and put a card from your hand into the soul. Choose up to 3 unit cards with different grades from your soul, call them to the Vanguard Circle, and if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, those called units get power plus 5k until the end of turn. So essentially, this skill gives you a +1 because you put in 2 cards of resource value, but you get 3 cards from your soul, which honestly is pretty good. It allows you to flood the board without dedicating too much resource for it. And the 5k extra power buff is nice, but I don't think it's gonna make too much of an impact, as if you go first, it doesn't apply. If you go second, yes, they're plus 5k, but that extra 5k might work potentially in defensive scenarios, but I don't think it's like that insane to think about. In combination with Persona Rite, different story, but then because then it's like plus 15k, and 15k to the front and potentially more if you call in a column could honestly be pretty powerful. So overall, pretty decent, but you're still very restrictive depending on what you soul charge. You always have the grade 1 and grade 2, that can be your right line, which means you have a 15k attack that comes out, that gets an additional 5k, and you call out Arena, which then gives you another soul. But if you don't see a grade 3 in the top 7, or your random soul charges, or you're not able to put a soul grade 3 from your hand in the soul, you might not get 3 cards out of it. So it's very unlikely, but it can happen, so keep that in mind. But then Luquier also has an additional effect, which is auto Vanguard Circle. At the end of your turn, cost, put 2 Vanguards in the soul and draw a card. So this is nice because it essentially sets up your skill for next turn. Again, you put in the grade 1 and grade 3 you called out back into the soul, you draw a card for your plus, but then immediately you set up for next turn because now you can call them out once again. Overall, it's really nice because it also means you compensate the discard cost for her initial effect at the end of the turn, so you don't minus, and because you put the cards back into the soul, they're also safe and secured. But you're probably going to keep the grade 2s on the board because those are also potential interceptors. So overall, it's a pretty interesting skill dynamic between the 2 skills, and it worked nicely with what we've seen so far with the right line, but it becomes even more apparent how strong this is once we take a look at the support cards around it. So first off, surprisingly enough, we have a grade 3 order in the likes of Hurry and Join, Silverthorn Servants, and this normal order has the effect, this card can be played from soul and play this with cost count plus 1 if you have a Vanguard with Luquier in its card name. So that's interesting because you can play this from hand, but now you can also play it from soul, which is very good because it's very likely there's a scenario where you're going to randomly soul charge this, which means it is much better than drawing it, because if you draw it, you need to discard it to use it. If it's in your soul, that's no longer the case. Now, I don't know the ruling here, but I assume you need to put it into the drop zone from your soul, so the cost is soul blast countable as 1, but it's a soul blast of a card you couldn't use for your combo play, so that's completely fine. But in the case you don't have to soul blast it, it stays there, which means you can use it again for next turn? But I don't think that's the case. And we need to get a ruling for that specifically, how that interacts, because usually you pay the cost by discarding the card, but you cannot discard it because it's in your soul. So I'm very curious how that particular interaction worked. If any of you guys know that, let us know in the comments down below so we can clarify this ruling. Now, what this order actually does is choose one of your rear guards, and it gets auto rear guard circle. When your Vanguard attacks, cost, put the unit in your soul, choose a card with only Pale Moon Forge clan and grade less than or equal to your Vanguards from your soul, and call to the rear guard circle. until the end of turn. So this is essentially a multi-attack enabler, and it's honestly really good because it has no additional restriction, because the moment you're grade 3 you can essentially call out anything that matters, because we don't have any specific grade 4s that we're gonna play. You can also call out the same unit, so you can give a particular unit that's a strong beater or maybe has an on-attack skill, it goes itself in the soul and it pops out immediately and you can attack with it again. That's what makes this card very, very nice, and as we're gonna see with the particular other cards, can be very destructive on a lethal turn. So overall, for 1 counterblast, an additional attack in an order that can be soul charged and still be used means it is honestly very consistent, and because of the way that our right line works, we can potentially even search for it. So overall, a very powerful order that is going to be probably a mainstay in Luquier for a long while. Now, moving on to the direct support unit, we have a grade 1, which is Silverthorn Breathing Dragon, and this grade 1 has the effect, although when the unit is placed on the back row rearguard circle from Soul, if you have a Vanguard with Luquier in its card name, cost Soulless 1, choose one of your Vanguards and it gets continuous on Vanguard circle. All of your front row rearguards get power plus 5k until the end of turn. So now we can put an additional mini Persona Ride on top of it, which can make big numbers. And now the 5k of Luquier skill will actually matter, because now we start to get into a realm where we can potentially give plus 20k or more to the columns once we Persona Ride. So this could make very lethal push turns, and because it's continuous, this also means the unit we call out from the soul with the order, we also get the additional 5k. So those are really big numbers we are staring at, and it's not too hard to set this up with all the extra soul charging as well as searching. So honestly, pretty good here. And then finally, we have probably the big beater of the deck, and also this is what I'm referring to with the intro. We have a new grade 2, which is Silverthorn Rising Dragon, and Rising Dragon has the skill, although when the unit is placed in the rearguard circle, cost put a card from your hand into the soul and draw a card. So this is exactly the same skill as Time Jared Dragon in a grade 2. That's really good for early aggression as well as consistency, because this is free resources. It puts cards in the soul, which sets up your plays for Luquier, but then draws you a card which will draw you to more of your combo pieces you're going to need for your combo plays, which makes the deck even better. Literally Time Jared Dragon, but then a turn earlier. And this is what I meant with Gear Chronicle support, because you can use this in Chronojet, because it's generic. You can even use this in any Dark States deck for that matter, and it's gonna benefit any Dark States deck for that matter. And the interesting thing is, in my opinion, the Chronojet deck lacked good grade 2s, and this is a grade 2 that's honestly really good. You can just slam it down in the early game, be very aggressive, and you don't care for your opponent to attack into it, because it did its job. It draws you the card, it gave it extra soul that you could use for GG or any of your other soul blessing skills, and in certain instances, I could even make the argument, but I have to look into this, that this could even just justify replacing swirlers, because it gives you the same amount of soul, and to some extent even the same amount of utility, which honestly is really, really good, especially for the price tag. To be fair, these are triple R's and they will probably be expensive by the box, but we have to wait and see if they are just expensive as swirlers, because swirlers are getting a bit ridiculous. And with Luquier being the way she is, I can see swirlers getting even more expensive, because swirlers still work really well for Luquier as well. So yeah. But then, of course, Rising Dragon has more than just draw, cycle, and soul charging, as it also has the effect continues a rearguard circle. During your turn, if you have a Vanguard with Luquier in its card name and 2 or more of your units were placed on the rearguard circle from soul this turn, this unit gets power plus 10k. If 4 or more were placed, it gets an additional power plus 10k. So, on the first attack wave, when you use Luquier's skill, this will be at least 20k. If Luquier gets an additional 5k, it's 25k. If it gets the additional 5k because of Breathing Dragon, that's a 30k attacker. That's honestly already really good for nothing. This could be on turn 3 when your opponent is potentially turn 2, grade 2. If you Persona Road and you use the order, that means this thing will potentially be 40k on the first swing, and you can give it to himself the skill, it goes to soul, it pops out, and now you called 4 cards from the soul, and now it gets an additional 10k, and now it's a 50k attacker. Those are pretty good numbers you generate without needing to put in too much resources. You might need multiple cards, but with the draw power, the searchability, the extra soul charging, it's not very unlikely to get this off relatively consistently. And you don't even have to rely on Breathing Dragon. It just makes the columns like 5k weaker. 5k weaker is completely fine. So honestly, Rising Dragon is probably going to be one of the finishing plays of this deck, as it can reach this insane numbers so easily without needing to dedicate Soul Blast or Count Blast outside of the other skills you're using, regardless if having Rising Dragon or not. Very interesting ride line for Pale Moon, aka Dark States, as it looks very powerful. It might even have some premium applications with the Silverthorn engine, but we have to wait and see what players are going to figure out and how they can abuse these cards. And that basically gives us all the cards that we've seen so far. Overall, I'm very excited about these cards because I've always been a fan of Pale Moon, and this deck looks kind of interesting to play. But as an added bonus, it also gives us more Chrono Jet options, as I can definitely see Rising Dragon to be an option to be played in Chrono Jet to divert the build a bit from Swirler, as there are other great ones I like to play in the deck, but they aren't be able to be played because you dedicate your space to Swirlers. And with Rising Dragon, you might be able to get away with not running Swirlers and then go for a different approach. So I can't wait to try this out, and I'm very curious what you guys think of these cards. So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of these cards for Pale Moon, as well as the 2 new promos. Do you think anything special is being able to be played here in an interaction I've been overlooking? Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. As always, this video has been brought to you by our lovely patrons over at patreon.com/VanguardInsider. You guys are amazing. If you do want to support the channel or everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a patron today. But with that said, I've missed the time leap, and I'll see you guys in the next one!